At 16, I stood at the edge of our driveway with a torn backpack and nowhere to go. My mother didn't cry. My stepfather didn't flinch. They said I was holding them back, that their real family deserved peace. 10 years passed. I never called, never wrote. And when they showed up for the house tour, they didn't expect me to be holding the keys. I still remember the smell of burnt coffee and bleach that morning. My mother was wiping down the counters like it was just another Saturday. My stepfather, Alan, stood at the door with his arms crossed, like a prison guard waiting for a shift change. I had just gotten back from my friend Kyle's place. I was supposed to spend one night but stayed for 3. When I walked in, no one said hi. No one asked if I ate. They were waiting. My mom didn't even look up when she said it. "Joseph, you're not staying here anymore." My stomach dropped, but I didn't respond. I thought it was one of her dramatic threats again, the kind she used when Alan wasn't around, but he was right there, nodding like it was business. "We've talked about this," he said. "You're 16. You're old enough to figure it out." I blinked at them. "Figure what out?" I asked, barely getting the words out. This house is not a shelter," Alan replied. "You don't pay, you don't stay." I looked at my mother, waiting for her to say something. Anything. But she just kept scrubbing the counter, eyes down, like she was cleaning me out of her life. "You're lazy," she muttered. "You barely finish school, you work part-time like that means something." I had 2 jobs. I was trying to help with bills. But none of it mattered. They had already decided. I wasn't part of their future. She packed my things into a torn duffel bag while I stood there frozen. Alan handed me $40 like I was a stranger asking for gas money. No hug, no goodbye, just, "Don't embarrass us." It wasn't about space, it was about convenience. They were planning to turn my room into a nursery. Turns out my mom was pregnant again. The real family was on the way. And I was just the reminder of a past she no longer wanted. So I left, with the bag, the $40, and silence. I walked 6 blocks before I stopped shaking. The sun felt colder than it should have been. I called Kyle, told him I got locked out for a while. He didn't ask questions. He let me crash on the floor of his garage. No insulation, no heating. But it was more home than the house I'd just left. The nights were brutal. I remember lying awake listening to raccoons scratch at the trash cans. Some nights, I wondered if they'd notice if I died out there. They didn't. Not once did they call. Not once did they check in. I sold my old bike for food. Then my PlayStation. Then the watch my grandfather gave me. Each item hurt less than the last. You get numb, eventually. You stop expecting people to care. But in that garage, in the dark, I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to prove anything to them. I was going to build something they'd have to see, whether they wanted to or not. It started with odd jobs. Deliveries, warehouse shifts, cleaning gutters. Anything that paid cash. Anything that didn't ask questions. I used library Wi-Fi to apply for everything I could find. One day, I stumbled on a blog post about affiliate marketing. Sounded like a scam, honestly. But I kept reading. Then another post. Then a podcast. Then I started watching YouTube tutorials at the library until closing every night. For months, I didn't make a cent. But I kept going. I learned how to build websites, how to run ads, how to turn $5 into 20 with the right words and the right timing. Kyle didn't get it. Nobody did. But I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for the look I wanted to see on my mother's face. I didn't hate them. I just unlearned the idea that I needed their approval. There's a difference between being angry and being focused. I chose the second one. Because anger fades, but strategy? That sticks. They thought kicking me out would break me, but it gave me something they never could. A reason. And when a person has a reason, a real one, there's no stopping them. So while they decorated the nursery, I was teaching myself how to set up e-commerce funnels in the back of a laundromat, and I never stopped. Not when I got scammed, not when I got rejected from jobs, not when I slept in my car for 2 weeks. I kept my head down, because one day they'd look up and see exactly who I became. You learn things when you're hungry that no teacher can ever explain. You learn how long you can go without food before your hands shake. You learn how the cold feels in your teeth. And you learn how to lie with a straight face, especially when someone asks, "You doing okay?" I kept saying yes, always yes, because I didn't want pity. I wanted progress. Kyle's parents didn't even know I was living in their garage. He told them I came by to study late. Every night, I curled, up with my jacket as a blanket, a broken camping mat as a bed, and my spiral notebook tucked under my arm like armor. That notebook became everything: my plans, my research, my revenge. It was filled with scribbled passwords, notes from forums, sketched out website ideas, and earnings reports that weren't even mine yet. But I acted like they were. Every time I saw my old house from afar, it looked smaller, colder, like it didn't want me there either. That helped. It turned pain into fuel. I'd sit in the public library from opening to closing, pretending it was my office. I couldn't afford a laptop yet, so I used the free computers and took handwritten notes like I was preparing for war. I'd study affiliate strategies, niche selection, SEO, copywriting, things that sounded like magic when I started. I failed constantly. Clicks, but no sales. Ads banned. Accounts closed. But I kept coming back. I treated failure like feedback. Kyle thought I was crazy. He wanted to party, escape, forget. I wanted to build. Because every skipped meal was a reminder. Every insult they gave me played like a broken record in my head. "You'll never be anything. You're just dragging us down. Grow up." They didn't realize they were giving me a blueprint. Sometimes I wondered what they were doing during my lowest nights. Maybe decorating the nursery. Maybe bragging about how they set boundaries. Maybe forgetting I existed. That part hurt the most. The idea that I wasn't even worth their guilt. But I kept the pain where it belonged, between the lines of that notebook. By the end of the first year, that same spiral notebook was half filled, half ripped, and fully sacred. I didn't share it with anyone. Not Kyle. Not the rare friends who still answered my texts. It became the first place I ever felt safe. Because the notebook didn't lie. It didn't judge. And it didn't kick me out. It held proof that I was moving, slowly, quietly, but moving. And when I finally saved up enough to buy a second-hand laptop off Craigslist, with a cracked screen and missing keys, it felt like holding a sword. That laptop was ugly, but it was mine. I named it Deed, not for the house, not yet, but for the commitment. Every day I'd open Deed, boot it up with a screwdriver jammed in the power button, and start building. I learned to run Shopify stores, drop shipping, email funnels. By year 2, I made my first $300 sale. I cried like a kid. That moment didn't make me rich, but it made me real. From there, I scaled. I reinvested. I built templates. I created faceless brand pages with stock images and fake testimonials, because real ones would come later. I got good. Then I got better. Then I disappeared. I moved out of Kyle's garage, rented a micro studio, and disappeared from everyone, including him. Not out of spite, out of purpose. I needed silence, focus, discipline. I didn't want them to see me climb. I wanted them to hear the echo when I hit the top. By year 4, I made my first 100K. Quietly, no celebration, no announcement, just a bank statement and a deeper notebook. I moved cities, rebranded, built a team under a fake name. I was 22, running a 6-figure operation from a co-working space filled with people twice my age who had no idea I used to sleep next to a lawnmower. I paid cash for everything. I wore cheap clothes on purpose. I kept my name out of the paperwork. Why? Because revenge isn't about screaming, "I made it." It's about letting them find out when it's already too late. And I was getting close. I checked Zillow listings once a month, just to see if the old house ever popped up. It never did. Not yet. But I was waiting. Watching. Because when that door opened again, I wouldn't be the one being kicked out. I'd be the one holding the keys. The day I wrote my first line of code, I didn't even know what it meant. It was just a YouTube tutorial some guy filmed in his basement, explaining how HTML worked. I followed along because I was bored and broke, not because I believed it would change anything. But as I typed it out, something clicked. It was the first time I ever gave a computer a command, and it listened. There was no rejection, no silence, no one telling me to try harder, just instant response. And I craved that. I spent the next week doing nothing but copying other people's code and breaking it on purpose, just to see how it failed. I couldn't afford online courses, so I reverse-engineered free websites line by line. My notebook went from business ideas to raw syntax, headers, divs, CSS, then JavaScript, then automation scripts. My hunger turned to obsession. And for once, I didn't feel like a ghost in the world. I felt in control. It started with fixing broken Shopify templates for strangers on forums. Most of them didn't even know how to pay me, so they'd offer $10 via PayPal or a shout-out. I took everything. One day, someone messaged me, "Can you fix my product page and speed it up?" I said yes, even though I didn't know how yet. I spent 2 days watching tutorials, tested it on a copy of the site, then gave it back faster, cleaner, better. They paid me $100. That was more than I made in 2 weeks at a restaurant job. That payment changed everything. It proved that my brain had value. Not just my body, not just my labor, my skill. That moment burned into me. I started branding myself under a new name, built a Fiverr profile, created a faceless LinkedIn account, used AI-generated images for my avatar. I didn't want anyone to trace me back to where I started, because I wasn't that person anymore. By now I had my own cheap laptop, a pocket Wi-Fi router, and a system. Wake up, code, market, sell, deliver, repeat. I automated client onboarding with Google Forms and Zapier. I used Notion like a control room. I built and sold Shopify themes in the background. I learned email marketing, copywriting, and how to write like a human with the precision of a machine. While people I used to know were partying, I was building sales funnels from a laundromat. I didn't post photos. I didn't brag. The most powerful moves are the ones no one sees coming. And that's exactly what I was designing. In silence. My first 10K month came 6 months later. I had 5 fake business names, 3 domain emails, and one purpose: to make sure the world that threw me out would one day sit at a table I owned and have to ask permission to stay. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about the message, the quiet knock that would eventually echo in their bones. He's back. But I wasn't rushing it. I let my income grow. I reinvested in better gear. I hired freelancers overseas to do design while I handled the back end. I built systems that ran 24/7 while I slept. I didn't just want to be rich. I wanted to be untraceable, untouchable, unbothered. One night I checked Zillow for fun, and there it was. My old house, listed, foreclosure, owner, Alan H. Asking price low, very low, almost sad. And for the first time in years, I smiled. Not out of revenge, out of readiness. This wasn't rage, it was strategy. I reached out through a shell company, sent in a quiet cash offer. No haggling, no fanfare, just numbers and silence. I didn't even need to see the house again. I remembered every inch of it already. The deal closed within weeks. I never had to show my face. I didn't go to the inspection. I didn't call the agent. I wired the money, signed digitally, closed through a P.O. box, and just like that, I owned the place I was thrown out of. Full circle. I sat in my apartment, staring at the signed deed. The name on it wasn't Joseph. It was the name I built, the one they never knew. But the moment they saw it, they'd understand. And that's all I wanted. I wasn't going to throw them out. I wasn't going to scream. I just wanted them to walk through that house one more time and realize they didn't belong there anymore. I wanted them to feel exactly what I felt. The silence, the distance, the weight of not being wanted. Because nothing hurts more than being invisible in a place you used to call home. I used to wonder if they'd even remember my birthday. Spoiler, they didn't. Not at 17, 18, or 21. No message, no email, not even a wrong number call. To them, I vanished the day they closed that door. And honestly, it helped, because disappearing gave me power. No expectations, no guilt, no ties. Just silence, the kind that lets you rebuild without anyone watching. For 10 years, I didn't post my face. Didn't update my old friends. Didn't even Google them. I told myself I didn't care. And for the most part, I didn't. But I was waiting for the day they'd be forced to say my name out loud again. And when I saw the house listed under foreclosure, that was the moment. They didn't realize it yet, but I was already in the room. The bank sent them formal notices, final dates, vacate orders. I knew the process. I studied it like scripture. I waited until the very last legal window before closing the deal. Why? Because I didn't just want the house. I wanted the impact. I wanted them to pack their boxes thinking they were leaving it behind, only to realize they never truly owned it. Alan tried to fight it, of course. Probably thought his last name and loud voice still mattered. But liens don't care about bluster. Credit scores don't bend to ego, and foreclosure notices don't stop when you're yelling at your mailbox. My offer came from a clean Delaware LLC with a neutral name and a quiet attorney. No flags, no warning, no trace of me. Until it was too late. I wanted the truth to hit them in the hallway. At the moment, they thought it was over. The walkthrough was scheduled on a Thursday at 3 p.m. I arrived early. I didn't bring furniture, just a chair, a key, and the deed. The realtor was a kid, mid-20s, probably his third showing ever. He didn't ask questions. I told him I wanted to greet the previous owners personally. I have history with the property, I said. He nodded like he understood. But he didn't. No one did, until the door opened and I saw her. My mother. She looked older, but still walked like she ruled every room. Alan was behind her, carrying a taped-up box that said, "Kitchen." The moment they saw me, I watched time collapse on their faces. My mother froze. Alan squinted. They didn't speak, not at first. And that silence? That hesitation? It was louder than any apology they could have faked. She blinked. Once. Twice. Then whispered, "Joseph?" I let the silence stretch. I wanted her to feel it. The distance. The weight of every year I spent, invisible. I leaned back in the chair, tapped the deed on my lap, and nodded. "Welcome back," I said. "You're right on time." Alan didn't speak. His hands tightened around the box like he was about to drop it. "What? What is this?" my mother asked. Her voice cracked on the second word. "Tour day," I said. "I figured you'd want to say goodbye properly." The color drained from her face. "This house? It's yours?" I shrugged. "On paper, yes. In memory, no." She stepped forward, half defensive. "Why would you do this?" I stood slowly. "I didn't do anything to you. You made your choices. I just signed the paperwork." Alan finally spoke. "This is some kind of joke." I looked him dead in the eye. "No, this is closure." They left without saying much. No begging, no apologies. Just quiet. And honestly, that was better. I didn't want theatrics. I wanted impact. When the door shut behind them, I sat in the empty living room for hours. Same walls, same smell. But it didn't feel like home. Not anymore. It felt like justice. Me. Alone, silent, and finally in control. I didn't move in. Didn't renovate. Didn't even stay the night. I just kept the lights on. Let the mailbox fill. Let the lawn grow. Because sometimes, revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's just being the one who gets the final word without saying it. And that's exactly what I was, the final word. In their story. In my own. In the house they thought I'd never see again. They left that day like people walking away from a grave. Stiff, slow, unsure if they should look back. They didn't. And I didn't chase. I locked the door behind them and stood in the hallway for a long time. It didn't feel like a win. Not in the way movies show it. There was no applause, no dramatic soundtrack. Just the faint sound of the mailbox creaking in the wind. But I wasn't after celebration. I was after presence. I wanted them to know that the house, my house, still stood, and I was inside it, breathing, watching. Not as the son they threw out, but as the man who signed the deed they couldn't afford. That house had walls that heard everything. Fights, screams, orders, lies. Now, it heard silence. And I liked It that way. I didn't renovate it. I didn't flip it. I let it sit exactly as they left it. Old furniture. Cracked tiles. Ghosts in every corner. But I cleaned it. Not to erase the past. To preserve it. Every time I mopped the floor or dusted the kitchen counter, I remembered her words. You're a burden. You'll never make it. You're not like Alan. Each insult was baked into the walls like smoke, but I didn't paint over it. I let it breathe. That house wasn't a home anymore. It was a reminder, a monument to everything they said I couldn't become. And when I sat on the old couch they used to fight on, I felt power. Not joy. Not revenge. Power. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't need to be posted. The kind that lets you walk past. The mirror and nod, knowing exactly who you are. I kept tabs on them, not obsessively, just enough. I watched Alan's name vanish from business listings. Saw my mother's social media turn from polished to desperate. Selfies alone, vague, captions about new chapters. It didn't satisfy me. It warned me. They weren't rebuilding. They were unraveling. Alan filed for bankruptcy. Twice. My mother tried starting a handmade jewelry page that never reached more than 40 followers. They were still trying to act like life was okay. But they weren't okay. And I knew why. Because once someone builds their entire self-image on superiority, watching you succeed is the most painful thing they'll ever endure. I never had to say, I told you so. My silence was loud enough. I had become the ghost in their mirror, not haunting them, reflecting what they chose to ignore. Sometimes I drove by their new place. Smaller. Out of town. No fence. One car. I never got out. Just parked across the street, sipped coffee, and let the engine idle. I didn't want to be seen. I wanted to see. Not out of hate, out of curiosity. To understand what happens to people who trade blood for comfort. What it looks like when you bet on the wrong child. I saw Alan mowing the lawn once. Slow, hunched. Nothing like the man who barked orders and puffed his chest. My mother never came out. Maybe she didn't want the neighbors to see her. Maybe she was tired of being strong. Maybe she was afraid of seeing me again. Not the boy she kicked out, but the man she created with every cold word and closed door. Back at the house, I installed cameras. Not for security, for symbolism. Every room now had an eye. Watching, recording, preserving. I didn't broadcast it. I just let it sit in the cloud. Quiet proof that I was still present, still in control. I turned the front porch light on every night and left it that way. Not because I was home, but because I could be, and they'd never know. The house stayed empty, but never abandoned. And that's what mattered. I didn't need to live there. I just needed them to know I owned it. That every time they passed by, every time they thought of back when, the image burned into their memory would be mine. Me, calm, seated, holding keys they'll never touch again. It happened on a Sunday. I remember because I was walking through the hallway when I saw the silhouette at the gate. My mother, alone, holding a folder. No makeup, no coat. Just her and a face I hadn't seen up close in 10 years. I didn't open the door right away. I stood back behind the curtain, just watching her hesitate. The same woman who once told me, "This house isn't your future," was now standing on the steps like she wasn't sure if she should knock. When she finally did, it was soft. Not timid. But nothing like the woman who used to slam doors behind her words. I waited. 5 seconds. Then 10. Then I opened. Slowly. I didn't say her name. Didn't smile. Just held the door with one hand and my silence with the other. She looked older than I expected. Tired in a way that makeup couldn't hide. She tried to smile. "Hi, Joseph." I didn't respond, just held her gaze. She glanced inside. "You kept it." Mostly the same. I didn't say I did that on purpose. I didn't say anything at all. "I thought maybe we could talk," she added. "Just a few minutes." I stepped aside, but I didn't invite her in. I let her walk past me like a guest. She looked around as if trying to recognize the place. Or maybe trying to recognize herself in it. "Alan's not with me," she said. "He doesn't know I came." I nodded once. No reaction. She sat on the edge of the old couch and placed the folder on the coffee table. I didn't sit. I stood behind the armchair. The same one I once curled into when they yelled through the walls. "I've been thinking a lot," she started, "about how things went, how I handled everything back then." She paused, like waiting for permission to continue. I gave her nothing. "You were a good kid, smart, quiet, and She stopped, swallowed. "I didn't know how to raise you after your dad. I wasn't ready." She looked up. "That's not an excuse, just the truth." Her voice cracked on truth. I still didn't speak. My silence made her nervous. That was new. She was always the dominant one, always in control. But now she squirmed. "You don't have to forgive me," she said, looking away. "I just needed to say something before we lost all chance of saying anything." I stepped forward and picked up the folder. Inside were photos. Me as a kid. School drawings. Birthday cards I didn't know she kept. I stared at them. Not because I missed them, but because I hadn't expected her to hold on to anything. She watched me like a prisoner awaiting sentence. "I don't want anything," she whispered. "I just needed to see who you became." I finally spoke. "You did see." She blinked. I closed the folder and placed it back down. "You saw me. When I had nothing. When I slept in a garage. When I worked double shifts. You saw all of that, and said I was the problem." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. "Not yet." "I thought I was doing what was best for everyone," she said, almost begging for justification. "You were," I replied, voice flat. "Because I wouldn't be this version of me if I hadn't met that version of you." That's when she cried. Silently. Not for me. For herself. She left without asking to stay. I didn't walk her to the door. I let her find her own way out, just like I had once. She paused at the frame and looked back. I didn't. I sat in the armchair, back straight, face still. She whispered, "I'm proud of you," like it would fix something. But pride from a ghost doesn't mean much to the one who survived the haunting. When the door clicked shut, I exhaled. Not relief. Not closure. Just control. The house had seen both of us now. The son she forgot, and the mother I never became attached to again. I didn't hate her. I didn't wish her pain. I simply didn't need her anymore. And when you no longer need someone, they lose all power, especially the kind that once pushed you into the cold. When the door clicked shut behind her, the sound echoed differently than before. It didn't feel like rejection. It didn't feel like triumph. It felt final, like a book being sealed rather than a wound. I didn't get up. I didn't watch her walk down the steps or check if she turned back, because it didn't matter anymore. I didn't need proof that she came. I didn't need closure. I had already lived through it, and now I was living beyond it. That house, once filled with yelling, cold shoulders, and slammed doors, was now quiet, not empty, just still. And that silence, the same silence I grew up drowning in, now belonged to me. I wasn't haunted by the past. I owned it. And I decided who got to walk through that front door, and who never would again. I sat in that living room for a long time, thinking about all the people who never believed in me. Teachers who said I was wasting my time. Friends who disappeared when things got hard. Family who chose convenience over love. None of them were villains, just people who couldn't see beyond their own comfort. I didn't destroy them. I outgrew them, and that's worse. For them. Because now they had to live knowing I didn't just survive without them. I became something they couldn't control, predict, or replicate. I was the version of myself they never expected, and they didn't get to claim any part of it. That's the real revenge, not screaming, not proving them wrong, just becoming someone so far beyond their reach, they can't even pretend to take credit. I didn't keep the house. I donated it. Quietly. Anonymously. To a foundation for kids aging out of foster care. The kind of kids who know what it's like to sleep in a car, to be called worthless, to be told that love is conditional. I didn't need the building. I needed the moment, and I got it. Keeping it would have been a weight. Giving it away made it light. People think revenge is about holding on. But real power, real peace, it's about letting go. Completely. And doing it on your own terms. I didn't need to remind her what she lost. She saw it the moment I opened that door. And she'll carry it longer than any punishment I could have planned. Sometimes I still walk past the neighborhood. Not to reminisce, just to remind myself. I see the same cracks in the pavement, the same broken mailbox, the same driveway that once held my duffel, bag and broken heart, but now I smile. Not because I miss it, because I outlived it. Every cold night, every hungry morning, every insult and silence and slammed door, I survived all of it. And I did it without becoming cruel. That's important, because you can choose to repeat the pain, or break it. I broke it, and I built something better. Not just a life, but a standard. One where no one gets to decide my worth but me. So no, I never opened that door again. Not for her. Not for the past. Not for anything that once made me feel small. That chapter is done. And in its place, I built something she'll never touch. A life lived without fear, without shame, and without apology. The kind of life I used to think was impossible. Until I created it. Quietly. Relentlessly. Completely. And if she ever tells the story, I hope she tells the truth. That the boy she left behind came back as a man she'll never fully understand. And that, in the end, was always the point.